I want to introduce you to what I want you to skim this week, which is an article called Social Studies Instruction and Reading Comprehension Evidence from the Early Childhood Longitudinal Study. And this comes from 2020, and I just discovered it a year or so ago, and I find it very fascinating. I want to share it with you. A longitudinal study, of course, is a study that takes place over a series of years. It's not a one and done sort of study, it is ongoing. And what I would like for you to do for this study is to skim through the foreword and executive summary and skim through at the end the summary and implications. And I'm going to sort of explain to you essentially what it says here. And that is that the research shows that if we want to improve reading scores in elementary school, what we need to do is spend more time teaching social studies. Social studies instruction is connected to improved reading scores, even more so than giving additional reading instruction. And this is really important because really for the past 30 years plus, social studies time has been decreasing in schools. And the excuse has always been we need to focus on students reading. If students can't read, they can't understand social studies later on. Of course, we need to focus on reading. That's more important. And reading is important. I think every elementary educator believes that or should believe it. But what this research indicates to us is that to improve student reading scores, we need to teach social studies. And what's really interesting about this research, and I don't think this is in the part that I'm asking you to skim, although it might be, is that this works for all students. It is not just students of a particular race or ethnicity. It works for both male and female students. The only group that it's not really strong for is students who are wealthy. Um, and so the students who we're typically most concerned about as we look about things like closing what's traditionally been called the achievement gap, and I apologize, I don't remember the politically correct term that has been used for achievement gap now. But how can we close it? We can close it by teaching social studies in elementary school, which includes advocating for social studies instruction. And again, what it says here in the executive summary, we're not the first to find that loads of time devoted to language arts instruction does not improve student reading, but we are the first to find that literacy gains are more likely to materialize when students spend more time learning social studies. And this relates to a researcher who many of my colleagues here dislike, and that's E.D. Hirsch. And E.D. Hirsch argued that people needed to essentially learn more cultural literacy. And his critics argued, and I don't think his critics are accurate here. His critics argued that, oh my gosh, he is racist, he is sexist, he only wants people to learn about dead white guys. That's not true. And if you look at what he has written and you look at actually interviews that have been done with E.D. Hirsch about cultural literacy, he is very clear in what he wants, and it is not to learn about dead white guys entirely. Like, yes, people should learn about Washington and Lincoln for better or for worse. No person is perfect. But cultural literacy is complex and it helps literacy. So here's a nice example. Virtually all middle schoolers can read the words Berlin Wall. They can sound out the letters. But only some middle schoolers will instantly recognize the phrase and what it implies. They will know that Berlin was the capital of Germany and what happened after World War II and so on. And literacy is not just being able to sound out the words, and it's not, in other words, it's not just fluency. And it is understanding what is being said, and that often requires a cultural background. It requires, in other words, schema. And how do we get that schema? We get it from social studies instruction. And so notice this is very typical. Students in the United States spend on average 2 hours each day on literacy instruction in grades 1 through 5. They spend 82 minutes on math, a half hour on science, and 28 minutes on social studies. We also know that students from less affluent backgrounds, Hispanic students, and those attending public schools, whether it be traditional or charter schools, spend more classroom time than other students do, but actually they should be spending more time on social studies. We see that increased instructional time in social studies is associated with improved reading ability. Um, this is what that shows. More time in social studies shows a test score improvement for 30 minutes more of social studies instruction of 15%. 30 minutes more of language arts instruction has a 3% gain. 30 minutes more of math has a 6% gain for language arts scores, for reading scores. Non-core subjects, your art, your music, your PE has a 3% gain. Science actually has a gain of negative 1%. Now it's hard to see as on this video, but as you look at the document itself, you'll notice that there are vertical line segments here. This shows the confidence interval that this is accurate. So it is possible that maybe the social studies amount is overstated, but it is still a gain, and it's actually the biggest gain of the lowest amount of anyone. So social studies is super important. Notice here, students who benefit the most from more social studies time are girls and students from lower income and or non-English speaking homes. Um, this is so important. If we are talking about being culturally proficient, if we're talking about anti-racist pedagogy, if we're talking about making schooling better for everyone, we need to spend more time on social studies. And so this is why I'm sharing this material with you. I encourage you to share it with everyone you know. Share it with your cooperating teacher, share it with your principals, share it with your school board members. If you want reading scores to go up, there's lots of things we can do. One of those things we can do is to um, spend a little more time on social studies in elementary school. So again, I highlighted some of that for you here. Please read the forward and executive summary. Please also, or skim, please also at the end, the summary and implications, skim that. Again, this is important, I think. I encourage you to read it, to reflect on it. Maybe you'll disagree with it, and you know what? That's your choice. Um, but I think it should be a call to action for all educators. Thank you.